Hi, my name is Scott Camp Schaefer, and I'm a clinical social worker here in Austin, Texas. And today I wanted to talk to you about little t traumas and why they deserve your attention. So, there's two basic types of trauma that most people deal with. And a lot of people focus almost entirely on the big T traumas. And these are the serious, devastating, obviously life altering events such as being affected by, fire, flood, earthquakes, hurricanes, natural disasters, or, serious, significant abuse physically, emotionally, that leaves these indelible scars on us that will just persist over the decades unless we do something to treat them. But little t traumas tend to be what like some people call like microaggressions, or things that don't necessarily in everybody's mind rise to the level of severe abuse or neglect, but they can be these little cuts that tend to accumulate over time in people's lives and tend to really contribute to their long-term suffering unless they go addressed. And that's why I think this problem is so easily ignored as far as the little t traumas, is that people from the outside don't necessarily see how injurious they are. For example, people who were bullied when they were growing up, other people may think that, well, I got over it, they can get over it, but they don't understand the long-lasting impacts of that. And so it really is a very subjective thing. What makes these little t traumas so toxic over time, and that they accumulate a residue that can be very serious and injurious to people's mental and emotional well-being. So the specific reasons I think that the small t traumas need and deserve our attention is, number one, is that they can add up over time, like I mentioned, is this experience of a death by 1,000 cuts. And unless people are trained to pay attention to those, they may become kind of like the frog that gets into uh, onto a stove in some hot water that is turned on at a low level, but the heat gradually builds up, and then the frog dies because it's gotten to boil to death, and its internal thermostat didn't tell it that the water was too hot. And if there are other things that have come on there, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, then that makes things tremendously dangerous for the frog and for anybody else who's been a victim or has experienced a small t trauma. The other thing is that these little t traumas can contribute to the developments of mood disorders, and like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. There may not be one particular instance that triggers the mood disorder, but again, the accumulation of these over time can eventually reach the threshold where somebody is experiencing a mood disorder, most often probably depression. And they say, there's the old saying that at the heart of every depression is a loss that hasn't been grieved. Well, if that loss was in the form of a complicated grief or a small t trauma, then of course it's going to lead to people feeling depressed and developing clinical depression. Um, Another reason that small t trauma shouldn't be ignored is because of the risk of developing substance use disorders or addictions, behavioral addictions that can be used to self-medicate someone because of the either individual or accumulation of small t traumas. So then people wind up developing addictions, and they wind up being treated for that, but then nobody pays attention to the small t traumas that contributed to that. So some people maybe be born with addictive tendencies, and those just get ignited because of exactly the wrong circumstances. But again, small t traumas can be the culprit for that. And then there's also this experience, the fourth reason for not forgiving small t traumas, the attention that they're due, is that people who have experienced trauma over a long period of time especially tend to develop this emotional numbing, and they tend to have problems with feeling emotions because there's just this general numbness that pervades the whole experience of their feeling life. And this can negatively impact people's relationships. Because when, the partners or family members or friends may be like, "Why aren't you happy because of such and such? We're doing something that's enjoyable." And they'll be like, "No." Um, so the partners wind up wondering, is there something that I've done that's contributed to this lack of joy and ability to enjoy things that otherwise would be enjoyable for people? And so the numbness can negatively affect people's relationships and perhaps inadvertently create conflict in those relationships because people want us to be happy when we're with them. And yet they're not. If we're not, then they may blame us, or they may blame themselves, or they may blame the relationship, and that may portend the end of otherwise mutually enjoyable and satisfying and fulfilling relationship. So I hope what I've said has made sense to you. And if it does strike a chord in you, I do encourage you to reach out to me by filling out the form at the bottom of the blog post page that's on my website, or by calling my number if you're living in this Austin Central Texas area. I'm seeing people all across Texas now because of the current pandemic, and through teletherapy can help you even if you're in a far corner of the state. But in any case, I do encourage you to get help and support if you deal with any significant number of the small t traumas, because there's something that doesn't need to be ignored and can be very injurious to your mental and emotional health, as I mentioned, if you do ignore them and you develop any of these other problems that often follow from small t traumas that haven't been addressed. And I use EMDR, image transformation therapy, and other approaches that help people to get on the other side of these so they can live healthy and normal lives. And I would be happy to talk to you about that if that's something that you're interested in specifically. So thank you so much for watching today. I don't do enough of these days, and I would love to do more. Just the time and circumstances haven't been allowing it, but I do hope you all are taking good care, staying safe, and hopefully we'll get to the other side of the current situation, including any traumatic experiences that you're dealing with. So take good care, and goodbye for now.